Come in, have a seat. I'll be with you in just a minute. I'm just giving my hands a quick clean. Hygiene's very important in my profession. You don't want to pass germs from one patient to another, you know. Also, they say it's therapeutic after making a difficult decision. I don't know why. Maybe it's like an absolution. You wash your hands and you're ready for the next task. I wash my hands a lot these days. Now, how can I help you? Oh, excuse me, I must clean up this paperwork. I meant to put it away after I'd signed it off. We get more and more of these in to sign. Ever since the End of Life Assistance Bill was passed by the Scottish Parliament, it kind of comes with the territory now. Being willing to offer the opportunity to end your life when a person is bad news. It could be mother, father, granny. Relatives can't have a say in the process. They're not allowed to be witnesses, but they can still have an influence. You'd be surprised. Friend of a friend signs the form, but sometimes the family are in the background, particularly if there are other reasons why a person might want to end their life, like money. But don't worry, there are safeguards in place. A person must have either been diagnosed with a terminal illness, or they must find themselves dependent on others because of an incapacitating illness. And of course they must find living intolerable. Well, you would do though, wouldn't you? If you were made to feel a burden in your family or a drain on resources. I usually like to look at the option of care, palliative care that is, but ultimately there's not a lot I can do. If a person thinks they want to end their life or thinks they should end their life, there's a difference there, you see. More and more of these requests are coming from people who think they ought to end their life, not because of the fear of pain. Pain relief is much easier now, and people in palliative care respond well to it, usually. But because they feel they're prolonging the inevitable. I've seen mixed reactions from family members, ranging from people who are delighted that they don't have to deal with a relative with a degenerative disease, to people who are distraught because someone's decided to take their own life instead of accepting care. It's almost impossible to ascertain all the reasons behind a patient's decision. Forgive me for talking to you like this. It's that I've always been so used to figuring out ways of trying to preserve life. It's part of my medical training. The Hippocratic Oath stipulates that I must preserve life. But then, I don't suppose an oath means very much when you take God out of the process and you take the decision for living and dying by yourself. Things have become much more practical. With the number of initial requests that are coming in nowadays, it's a good thing there's such a quick turnaround after the initial request is granted. I send the patient to the psychiatrist for the first of their 2 assessments, and then the patient has 30 days in which to make the second request. There's not a lot of time to think then, you see, and then we can go ahead with the procedure. I make the final decision, and I'm there when the assistance to die is given. That can be difficult. I've seen assisted deaths go horribly wrong. 1 in 5 attempts at assisted suicide ends in failure. Either the patient regurgitates the drugs, or they wake from an unconscious state and the experience is traumatic. But that's only 1 in 5. Not all patients are elderly, by the way. Death doesn't discriminate, and neither does disease. So it's only right that people as young as 16 have the right to end their life in legislation. It seems a young age to make such a big decision, but then people can get married at 16, so maybe it's not such a big problem. I remember what I was like when I was 16 and regularly thinking that life was intolerable. Those are turbulent years for young people, a time when we gain independence. For young people with disabilities, it must be much harder to deal with the ups and downs of growing up. And young people who are dependent on others must face a really tough time. Depression and despair are usually big factors in the reason for people ending their life. Sometimes they're motivated by guilt and a feeling of being a burden on those who are caring for them, and it can be very difficult to persuade them otherwise. Then there's the even more difficult decision of people who are very disappointed because their children have disabilities. Then suddenly the young person decides they want to end their life. How can we know for sure where that decision came from? Believe it or not, I've always been considered to have a good bedside manner. People can talk to me. I'm a people person. That's why I became a doctor, to help people. It can be difficult telling someone they don't have very long to live, and we can't always be right. Sometimes people outlive the predictions and they rally round. It's also very difficult diagnosing a debilitating disease. News like that elicits all sorts of emotional reactions, but usually the person won't tell me what they're thinking now. It's as if they don't trust me the same. I have no desire to end the life of a patient, but it's as if they open up to me. I might give less thought to the idea of care or cure. That relationship seems to have broken down. We can explore the options of palliative care and who can come in to look after you at home, but since you mentioned the end-of-life assistance, we can discuss the options for that and consider a way in which you could end your life.
Hi Sally, you want a wee lift? Haven't seen you for a while. How's things?
Not bad. Just been out getting the shopping.
I'm just going to do that myself. How's your mum?
She's not good.
That's terrible, Sally. I heard she hadn't been well.
Well, she's decided to accept the end-of-life assistance that the doctors offered her.
I'm so sorry, Sally. That's terrible.
Well, it's her decision. Obviously, it affects me and the rest of the family. We don't have a say in the process. And the saddest thing is that she thinks she's doing us a favour. She thinks she's doing the decent thing by taking her life. She thinks she's a burden. I just feel terrible.
And why do you feel terrible?
I just feel so guilty about it. I mean, why does she feel like a burden? Is it because I haven't been there for her enough? I've tried my best, Jim.
I know, and I'm sure you have. Is there anyone else involved in your mother's life?
There's a carer that pops in and sees her.
And what likes the carer?
Okay, as far as I know. Mum seems happy enough with the arrangement.
Does your mother have any money put by? Is there anyone who may profit by her death?
She has some savings, but surely that's not it.
Money does funny things to people, Sally.
Well, I'll pop in and see her tonight. You know, she thinks she's being heroic by accepting death and taking matters into her own hands, but she's causing huge damage to the family. We've all been pointing the finger at each other about who could be doing what to help her situation. I had a huge argument with my sister on the phone last night.
Meanwhile, she thinks she's helping the situation by taking her own life.
Yeah, it's perverse. I wish the Scottish government hadn't passed that end-of-life assistance bill. You know, I'd love to know what the doctor said to make her think about this. They have too much power. Who are they to tell someone when to die?
This isn't an easy thing to take, Sally. The bill was supposed to help people die with dignity instead of suffering and being intolerably dependent on others.
Well, I think the guilt that we're going to be left with will be intolerable for us to live with. Imagine watching your own mother take her life and not be able to do anything about it. I wish you could see what she'll do to us. She just says, "You'll thank me for it one day."
It's cold today. I've put my cardigan on. I'm having the carer coming round shortly. She'll make my tea. Probably mince and tatties. That's what I like, a wee bit of home comfort. I used to like cooking. I cooked for my own family. In my day, we didn't have so many foods in fancy packages. We weren't that well off. It was real food we ate. And I made lovely soup, like my mother used to make when we were young. That wasn't yesterday. It's cold today. I've put my cardigan on. I never go out now. It's not the same. The world has changed a lot. It's different. People are different too. Less friendly. We never had to lock our doors years ago. It's dangerous not to do that now. People don't have time for people now. They don't say good morning when they pass by. I'm old now, I suppose. The young people have their own ideas. I'm glad to let them get on with it. Mine are all grown up now. I've 7 grandchildren. I had my family a long time ago. I had the energy back then for running about after them all. They kept us busy, Tom and me. I remember our days out to the seaside. Family holidays to Saltcoats. We could just afford that then. Now they go to Spain or warm places like that. It's cold today. I've put my cardigan on. Sally called in yesterday. She was doing the shopping. Says she met a neighbour. Jim, I think she called him. Or maybe it was Billy. No, Jim, I think. She said he was asking for me. That was nice. I don't remember him. Sally says he's known us for years. She says things like that all the time, but I don't remember. Sally has her own family now. It was good of her to call in, but I haven't much conversation. I don't go out at all, although she tries to take me out sometimes. I just don't feel like it. I can't walk quickly. And she has to stop all the time to let me catch my breath. It's not fair on her. Where's all the rest of them? It's always left to Sally. Poor soul. The grandchildren don't visit now. They're growing up now too. I remember when they were wee. I remember some things, you know. I could tell them stories and sit them on my knee. Granny always had a wee treat for them. But then they grew up and started to move away. I don't blame them. They're young. Why should they hang around an old woman? I don't keep so well now. They told me I have cancer. You probably don't want to hear that. I'm not looking for sympathy. Just forget about it. I'm not asking anybody to feel sorry for me. I've lived my life and it's time for me to go. The world doesn't have anything to offer me now. I'm tired out. I suppose we all get to a stage where we stop being able to help people and we start to become a burden to them. I don't want to be a burden. I'm better off away. Here, it's getting kind of chilly in here. I've had to put my cardigan on. I'm glad the doctor has given me the chance to end my life. I'm only going to get sicker. And the family will all feel they'll have to come round and be sympathetic. But they can't now. They have their own lives. I've had mine. The carer was good in that way. Joanne, her name is. She told me about the end of life assistance. And she told me that she could help me with it. She helps me with a lot of things. I can't cope with things so well now. She collects my pension and things and does my shopping. I don't need much now. I'm saving up for my grandchildren. It will be nice to leave them something when I die. Joanne takes to do with that as well. She's been putting money away for me. She's been a wee gem. She says I don't even have to make a will. She just brings in the bits of paper and I sign them and give her the money. It saves Sally a lot of bother. I've been here a long time and they haven't visited me. I don't like being a burden on any of them. I don't want them visiting me just because I'm sick. Sally doesn't agree with that, but that's okay. I just tell her she'll thank me for it one day. It's cold today. I've put my cardigan on.
Well, here's to Dad.
To Dad. Aye, he'll be missed.
You're right there.
Listen, I just wanted to say that I think you coped really well over these past 3 years that Dad was ill.
Please, David, you don't have to say anything.
No, you're my brother, and I think you need to hear this. I think it's a lot to have to deal with, isn't it?
We all had to deal with it, David.
I was away at university while you were at home with Dad. You were the one who was there for him.
Dad was happy for you to stay on at university and get your degree. Your future meant a lot to him.
I know.
He was proud of you. He told me before he died, he felt that he had lived a fulfilled life and that he could go to his Maker with a grateful heart and a sense that he had finished the race.
Parkinson's disease made him really vulnerable, didn't it? But when I saw him suffer, it was the most heroic thing I've ever seen. But you must have seen him on days when he didn't cope so well. But his endurance was tremendous.
He had his off days too. There were times when he prayed to God that his end would come, but he never pushed that. He seemed to accept his suffering as part of his life's journey towards a peaceful end. There's something very dignified about that.
Did Dad ever consider ending his life by assisted suicide?
He wouldn't entertain that. He knew that all things would run their course and that death would come. The one thing he did do, though, was to release me from the obligation of looking after him. I had the option to put him into care, but it wasn't till near the end that he went into the hospice.
The hospice staff were wonderful, weren't they? They really care for the people they're looking after. It's not as if they're no longer worthwhile people. You know, I think they'll actually miss Dad.
No doubt.
Can I be honest with you, Andrew? I can see a big change in you.
A change in me.
Yeah. You used to be, well, you're a lot more patient now. You seem gentler and somehow much more at peace. It's as if Dad's illness and the role you played in looking after him has had a huge positive impact on you.
I feel different. My views of life have changed a lot. When you're with someone who is so dependent, it's a very humbling experience. They rely upon you, and a bond of trust forms. It's really quite remarkable and also very rewarding. My dad became even closer to me these last few years. I knew that through caring for him, that I had become a man. I'll miss him.
We'll all miss him, Andrew. Tell me, did you feel at peace when you saw Dad slip away at the end?
I could see that a peace had come over him.
When the priest had visited him, and he seemed to be just waiting for his time to come, he looked ready, didn't he?
Yep.
He didn't say anything. He didn't speak. He just seemed to be waiting for his time to come. It was as if he had accepted the whole of his life, including the pain, and was ready to surrender it at the appropriate time.
Yep. His last few hours were precious. No words. Just a real sense of dignity and peace. I hope I can go that way too.
Yeah. I hope we're all given that chance when our time comes. Cheers.
Writing a homily isn't easy at the best of times. I remember they taught us that the best homilies are those that have been prayed about. With funerals, there is only a selection of readings that you can choose from. They inspire. They offer hope and consolation to the deceased's family and loved ones. My task is to make the homily different each time. I can talk about the scriptures. That part remains. But each person is unique, and their life and death is different to others. Suicide has always been a difficult issue for people of faith. But people of faith do take their own lives, and for all sorts of reasons. In the old days, suicide meant exclusion from Catholic burial. Today, we know an awful lot more about what makes a person suicidal, and whilst the Church never ever condones it, we do try to be compassionate, especially in extreme circumstances where the person is not fully aware of their own actions. The end-of-life assistance that's available now doesn't make exceptions for people of faith, and some people just can't understand why they shouldn't just accept it too. They want a dignified death. In my case, I'm a Catholic priest. How can I stand at the side of a person and administer the sacrament of the sick when he's planning to kill himself? They want the sacraments. They send for me, and sometimes they don't tell me what they're planning. What is a dignified death? I've seen a lot of people die, all different ages and circumstances, and it's the classic question, Father, why does God permit suffering? It's a good question, and yet no matter how much we ask it, God does permit suffering, and so surely it must have a purpose. Where does dignity go when a person becomes terminally ill? When does a person lose their dignity? How? Nobody wants to be in a state where they have to depend on others. Nobody wants to be a burden. But why do they feel like a burden? I visit people who are sick or have terminal conditions of one kind or another all the time. And I talk to the families. And there's nothing worse than when a family talks about a person as if that person were already dead, or as if that person is somehow no longer a person. And I ask myself, Was it really the illness or the disability that took that person's dignity away? Or was it the people around that person? You know, last week, I buried a man who had Parkinson's disease. It's a terrible disease. In the end, the man couldn't speak, couldn't feed himself, couldn't really do anything for himself. His nervous system had completely deteriorated. I visited him as often as I could. He was Catholic. He'd been married, but his wife died a long time ago. There were 2 sons. The younger son was at university, but the older son stayed home, gave up his job and looked after his dad. When I visited the house, I watched the decline in the dad, but I was also watching something else. That young man grew in stature and maturity looking after his dad. There were times where his dad got frustrated, particularly when he was struggling to speak. And I know that there were days where Andrew had to go into another room and hit a wall because his dad would shout at him when he tried to help. You see, his mind was sharp, but his body couldn't cope. In the end, it was very clear that they loved each other very much. And that man never lost his dignity, even though he suffered a great deal. And it made me think about my own spiritual father, Pope John Paul II. I became a priest because of him. He gave hope to the hopeless. I wanted to do that. When he was a young man, he was fully alive with vigour and energy. When he became ill with Parkinson's disease, he didn't cease to be fully alive, but he showed the world what it was to suffer. He suffered publicly, and he suffered the world's media looking in on him and his gradual deterioration. Did he lose his dignity? I don't think he did. I think he showed us that even in suffering, there is a certain dignity to be found. I hope I have that courage when I'm old. This homily is so much harder to write than the last one. This person accepted assisted suicide. She asked the doctor to help her take her own life. Her daughter, Sally, is devastated. The bereavement counsellor is spending a lot of time with her now. How could her mother think that she didn't love her enough to look after her in her suffering? 2 deaths, so different. One accepted suffering. The other one ended it by taking her life into her own hands. Which of these was a dignified death?
That was sad news about Julie, wasn't it?
Julie that's in our history class?
Yeah.
What about her?
Have you not heard? She's going to die.
What? How come?
Well, you know that she's not been well.
Yeah.
Well, apparently that's getting worse.
I saw she's been using a wheelchair recently, but I didn't think it was that bad it would actually kill her.
It's not that. She's making a decision to end her own life.
That's so sad, but why?
I don't know, I guess. She just doesn't want to live anymore, I suppose.
Is she still going out with Thomas?
They split up about a year ago, but they were together for 6 months. She looked distraught. I think she really liked him.
You don't think maybe that had something to do with her decision, do you?
Well, I don't think she'd kill herself over a boy, do you? And besides, that was so long ago.
I know, but it's such a tough thing to go through. can feel like your whole world's coming to an end. If you've given your heart to someone and it doesn't work out, never mind feeling you've been dumped because of a condition you can't even control. It's not something you recover from easily.
That's so true. I mean, I was so depressed when I broke up with John. I thought I'd never got over it. Life just seemed intolerable.
Yeah. What did Julie's parents say?
I don't know. They split up last year. I heard Julie say it was the hardest thing she'd ever been through.
Yeah. But you don't think then that maybe had something to do with her decision to, you know, kill herself?
I never thought of it. Why?
It's just, well, maybe she felt partly responsible, like her inability to do things for herself was putting pressure on her parents' marriage. Maybe she felt guilty.
I never thought of that, but do you know, her parents don't even get a say in the decision-making process. I mean, I know you don't think that that's terrible.
But what if it's true? I mean, what if there is more to it than just her condition? Lots of people have that condition. I know it's a terrible thing for her to go through, but, well, I know this girl who was diagnosed with it just before she was due to get married. She was terrified to tell the guy she was with in case he wouldn't want to marry her.
No wonder. What happened?
She told him, and, well, he just said he loved her, and all he wanted to do was to look after her.
That's so beautiful.
I know. I think that's true love.
Yeah.
They're married now, and they have a baby.
Wouldn't it be lovely if something like that could happen to Julie?
Well, who's to say it could?
Well, why don't you tell her that story?
Yeah, but will you come with me? It's a little bit awkward.
Sure, I mean, lots of people are talking to Julie now. She could have done with that a while back. I mean, nobody bothered with her up until now. She didn't have any friends and, well, I think she might have even been bullied.
Oh, Rachel, all of that makes me think even more that there's definitely more to her decision than just the illness.
Yeah.
Do you think she's really ready to make that kind of decision at this time in her life? She's 16. Right. I'm going to talk to her.
I'll come with you.
I remember when these used to fit her. So small. My wee Julie. My wee baby Julie. Her first shoes. I kept her first curl as well. It's in a box in the drawer beside my bed. Kevin and I had been together about 6 months when I told him I was expecting Julie. He was shocked. It wasn't something we'd planned. I liked him and he liked me, so we decided to make the best of it and get married. I suppose somehow we thought that having a child would make our relationship stronger. Well, we got married and things were good. Having a baby about the house isn't always easy. All those sleepless nights. Baby's totally dependent. We don't have much time for anything else. Your whole life's centred around the baby and providing for it. Julie was our world. I don't think Kevin was prepared for parenthood, but then who is? It's not something you can really prepare for. Being a parent is a steep learning curve, and you don't know how you'll cope until you're in the middle of it. Kevin had a bit of difficulty adjusting to having a baby in the house, but he loved his wee girl. And Julie, she was daft about her daddy. Me, I just always wanted children. As Julie got bigger, Kevin and I were able to relax a wee bit more. He enjoyed playing with her, taking her out for the day to do things. We talked about having more children. It was about the time she was going to secondary school that her medical condition was diagnosed. She was always a bright, cheerful, happy girl with a keen interest in sports. But she started to show some of the symptoms and her body was slowing down. When she was 14, her condition worsened. It became more noticeable. She kept it to herself mostly, but tiredness and muscle pain was becoming more obvious, and walking for any length of time was becoming a problem. She started dating a boy, Tom was his name. They'd known each other since they started primary school together and had often been paired up for activities. He was a nice young man. Romance started to blossom and he asked if he could take her to the cinema. Julie was all excited and nervous. Kevin didn't approve. She was far too young, he thought, what with this medical condition which made her more vulnerable. He was just being a kind, loving dad. Anyway, after a few months, Tom and Julie seemed quite close. I don't think Julie realised how much she'd given her heart to him. Then Julie became less capable of doing things for herself and Tom wasn't able to see her so often. Her walking had become a problem and the doctor was talking about getting a wheelchair for her. Kevin seemed to get really angry then. I hadn't noticed, but after her diagnosis, he'd started drinking more and more. He would come in and find me helping Julie, maybe helping her to get washed or giving her a hand with her homework. She was struggling to keep up with school. And he would just go to bed. When I tried to talk to him about this, he would either fly off the handle and apologise later, or he would just brush me off with some excuse to go out. It was like having two teenagers in the house. Oh, then about this time, Tom sent Julie a wee note to say that he hoped they could still be friends. But he was going on a skiing trip with the school and one of the girls on the trip was quite keen on him. Julie was heartbroken. She knew that she'd never be able to do all the things that she would have liked to do, but up till then she'd been quite positive about everything. By then, Kevin was really depressed. He and I had grown further and further apart. Didn't seem to know how to talk to Julie anymore. That was the saddest part of all. His daughter became a stranger to him. Then one day he said that he wanted to go away for a bit to think things out, to sort his head out. Well, that's what he said. But I knew that he was leaving. We haven't seen him since. I did my best for Julie, but I could see that she wasn't happy. One day when the doctor came, she asked if she could speak to the doctor on her own. I've always respected Julie's privacy, so I left them alone. But when the doctor came downstairs, there was something about her face, just a look I couldn't quite understand. She didn't make eye contact with me like she usually did. She just walked out the door. A few weeks later, Julie told me that she wanted to end her life. She had filled in all the forms and was writing to someone for support. I was speechless. What more could I have done to show her how much I cared for her, how much I loved her? After all the things I'd done for her, washed her, looked after her, been there for her. I was hurt. I know that sounds selfish, but I was hurt. She was 16 years old. How did she know that she wanted to die? Well, the doorbell went one day, maybe a few weeks after that. And when I opened it, it was two of the girls that Julie had known from school. They said they'd just passing and they thought they'd drop in and see how Julie was. Well, I knew that Julie probably wouldn't want to see them. All her friends from school had abandoned her. I don't think they knew what to say to her and they just decided to leave her alone. However, the two of them went upstairs and I left them for a bit. Then I thought I'd go up and see if they'd like something to drink. I went upstairs and when I got outside Julie's room, I could hear them chattering. So I thought I wouldn't disturb them, I'd give it a minute. Then I heard something I hadn't heard for a long time. Laughter. Julie was laughing with these two girls. I knocked at the door and went in. And there she was, sitting up in bed, tears in her eyes, but giggling away like any other teenager. I asked them, would they like something to drink? Maybe a cup of tea or a glass of Coke. Oh, Coke please, said the other two. Looked at Julie and she hesitated. Then she looked at me and gave me a big grin and said, that'd be good, Mum, thanks. Well, Rachel and Anna, the two girls that came, they're hardly away from this house now. They get upstairs to that room and they've got these computer games and magazines, you know, the teenage magazines, and they sit there and they chat away and they laugh and they play their games and they talk about things that only teenage girls should talk about and mums shouldn't know about. Julie's, she gets tired easily still. That's not going to change, but I can see that she's happy again. Just last week she asked me if I'd phone the doctor again. And I did. And when the doctor came, in the door, eyes down, no looking at me, and upstairs to Julie's room, I sat down here and I pleaded. I think I might have prayed. I don't pray, but I think I did. Then I heard the doctor coming downstairs. And she came into the room. And she looked straight at me. And she had a smile on her face. And she said, don't worry, everything's fine. Julie's doing well. And then, just as she was about to go out the door, she turned back and looked at me and she said, and so are you. I went upstairs and Julie was sitting there. I gave her a hug. She's a very brave wee girl. Oh, that's not right. She's not a wee girl anymore. She's a beautiful, dignified young woman, and I'm very proud of her. Oh, is that the time? Oh, Rachel and Anna are coming round to watch a film with us tonight. Better get the pizza on.
All things have their seasons. All things come to an end. The leaves fall from the trees, but just before they fall, they are golden and beautiful. Here at Dignified Dying, we believe that you are like that. For most of us, there comes a time when we realize that our days are limited and our life has reached its summit. And we believe that that's a beautiful time to make our transition. Perhaps you've been diagnosed with a terminal illness and want to avoid the misery of taking pain prevention medications. Or maybe you're advancing in years and find yourself incapable of doing the kind of things you always did. No one wants to be a burden to their loved ones. This can be the case for people who have lived a happy and active existence, but find themselves disabled by an accident. Dignified Dying understands this, and we have packages to suit every kind of eventuality. Every life is unique, and every life is precious, so let it end in a dignified way. Let Dignified Dying handle your final journey. Call one of our advisors now for a free information pack. There you'll find all you need to know, and with Dignified Dying, we're with you and your loved ones every step of the way. To apply, you must be 16 years or over. We'll discuss your circumstances and help you to complete all the necessary paperwork. With our special Gold Star package, we can even arrange your funeral plan,
and provide support to those you leave behind. Call now and you'll receive this beautiful pen completely free of charge. Return your initial paperwork within 30 days and you'll receive this marvelous carriage clock to watch the time pass gently by until you can take that final step towards a dignified end. At Dignified Dying, we believe that you are golden, and we're here to help you shine in your final days. Peace of mind is just a phone call away.